Hello everyone. So in this lecture video, I will be talking about the digestive system and its functions and obviously the structures that is implied in its functions. So these are the general functions of the digestive system. Ingestion obviously occurs in the mouth. Elimination occurs in the anus. Motility occurs throughout. Okay, the digestive, what we call the gastrointestinal tract. Secretion is the same. The most complicated portion is probably going to be the chemical digestion for you. And there's two types of digestion, mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion in this case is chewing is mechanical digestion. The churning of the stomach is a form of mechanical digestion. When we start talking about chemical digestion in this case is actually undertaken by enzymes. We're going to be talking about specific enzymes during this video. Then you have absorption. Absorption normally only occurs in the small and large intestine. Okay. And digestion, just to go back, normally occurs in the mouth, especially mechanical digestion, again, as I said before. In the stomach, chemical and mechanical digestion occurs. So the churning of the stomach and the swishing around the food in the stomach is a mechanical digestion. But then the stomach actually secretes specific enzymes. Okay. So, or actually have enzymes active in them. And so that's a type of chemical digestion. And again, as I said before, secretion. And when we talk about secretion, we're talking about saliva, salivary secretions, obviously stomach secretions, intestinal secretions. Okay, all of those things obviously occur throughout the gastrointestinal tract. Right? Main things, beginning and everything in between. Okay. The fancy term for motility means involuntary muscle movement. Okay. In the terms of the digestive system, motility is actually termed as peristalsis. And peristalsis is actually this wave-like motions that actually pushes food one way. FY, motility is normally only one way. It goes from the top, from the mouth, and goes down all the way down as soon and all the way to the exit using the anus. Okay. So you have two types of organs. So the gastrointestinal tract, again, is the passageway in which actually food travels through. Okay. And FYI, just to give you a clue, so you actually enter the mouth through the esophagus, it goes into the stomach, into the small intestine. There's actually three regions of the small intestine. The duodenum is the first region, then the jejunum is the second region, and the ileum is the third and most distal region. And then you have the large intestine, in which there's actually, again, in this case, multiple regions, actually 5 to be exact. You actually have the ascending colon, transverse, descending colon, sigmoid colon, okay? And then you have, in this case, the rectum, okay, which is the straight shot, okay? So that's actually what that is. Now, on the left, if you look at it, there's actually accessory digestive organs. And the reason why these are called accessory digestive organs is the lumen, or the inside of these organs, do not contain food particles. All right, so it's only the outside portions of this actually touch food particles. Okay, in fact, some of them do not directly touch food particles. So teeth, right? Only the outside of the teeth makes contact with food particles. If food particles goes inside your teeth, that's called a cavity. That's a problem. The tongue surface, that's all that makes contact with the food. But obviously, the inside of your tongue does not get food. In this case, food particles. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. So is with the salivary glands, the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Okay. I might as well talk about the functions as we go on. So we're going to do this chronologically. So you ingest by putting food inside your mouth. And as you chew, that is called chewing, is mechanical digestion. That is actually, in this case, performed by, in this case, the teeth, which are accessory digestive organs, and the tongue. So the tongue rolls the food, turns the food properly, and the teeth grinds them into pieces. And by the way, you have multiple types of teeth. You have incisors, canines, molars, premolars, okay? At the same time as you're chewing, the salivary glands, okay, so the tongue and the salivary glands, in this case, specifically the salivary glands, create saliva. And the salivary glands does two things. A, it actually secretes an enzyme, which aids in chemical digestion. So the teeth, tongue performs mechanical digestion, and the salivary glands create secretions but also performs chemical digestion. FYI, in the mouth, the only macromolecule that is digested, and I hope that you remember your macromolecules, you actually have proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, okay? So the 4 major macromolecules. I hope I'm not missing anything. The only macromolecule that's actually digested in the mouth, chemically digested, are actually carbohydrates, okay? All of the rest are actually mechanically digested in the mouth, okay? So then you swallow, and this is motility, right? So food just passes straight through, and there's actually a couple of sphincters that actually open, okay? And then food enters the stomach. In the stomach, 2 types of digestion occur again. So both chemical, okay? The chemical digestion that's actually performed by the stomach is actually performed on fats, lipids, and proteins, but no chemical digestion of carbohydrates actually occur in the stomach. And obviously the stomach churns, and it also has specific secretions, more specifically hydrochloric acid, that's actually secreted in the stomach. FYI, the hydrochloric acid that's actually secreted in the stomach is actually used to activate an enzyme called pepsin, and the object of pepsin is to digest proteins, okay? So without hydrochloric acid, pepsin does not get activated. Then obviously parts of your food, then all of your food doesn't exit. So your actual stomach controls the exit of food. So food bolus, or circular portions of food, then exits the stomach and goes into the first region of your small intestine, the duodenum. In the small intestine, all 3 regions, the duodenum, the jejunum, ileum, it's actually chemical digestion through enzymes secreted by the pancreas. So the enzymes that actually secrete, that actually does all the chemical digestion in the small intestine, is secreted from the pancreas, okay? And what happens is, as they are chemically digested in the small intestine, then they get absorbed also in the small intestine, so the macromolecules. So the proteins get digested into amino acids then gets absorbed. Carbohydrates gets digested into monosaccharides, specifically glucose, and glucose then gets absorbed. And then you also have, obviously, lipids gets, in this case, digested into fatty acids and glycerol. They get absorbed again in the small intestine. And so is for nucleic acids. So again, on nucleic acids, we have DNA and RNA, and adenine, guanine, cytosine, all of the stuff. Most of those things actually do not get absorbed, but some of them do, okay? And then food then, after all the nutrients have been taken out of it, most of it anyway, in normal consequences, exits then the ileum and actually enters the colon. And in the large intestine, this is actually, now you might think, oh, there's actually absorption that actually occurs in the large intestine. The primary substance that is absorbed in the large intestine, folks, is water, followed closely by vitamins and minerals. And we're talking about minerals, we're talking about magnesium ions, calcium ions, sodium ions, okay? Vitamins, vitamin K. All right. FYI, ladies and gentlemen, the vitamins that are actually absorbed in the large intestine is actually helped by the bacteria that actually lives in the large intestine. Okay? So that's actually very, very important. So, but all bacteria is not bad. The bacteria that actually lives in our gut, especially the normal ones, the ones that we are born with, or not born with, but that colonizes us in the first 6 months of age, actually helps us absorb and digest a lot of this minerals and vitamins that I'm talking about. The sigmoid colon, quite interestingly, is actually S-shape. It's actually an S-shape, and the reason why it's S-shape, okay, if you think about it that way, is if you have a straight shot here, ladies and gentlemen, once it goes, if there was no S-shape, that's why it's called sigmoid colon, because it's S-shape. If there was no S-shaped portion here, poop is just gonna, the moment you eat, it goes straight up. So there has to be a place in which fecal material is actually delayed from exiting. And then it actually enters then this straight portion, and it's called the rectum, and the reason why it's called the rectum is it's the straight portion. Recto means straight, okay, in Latin, and then obviously the actual opening to the rectum is actually called the anus. Okay, so a lot of those, again, functions actually occur that we were talking about before actually occur sequentially as it goes through the gastrointestinal tract along with the assistance of accessory digestive organs. Okay, this is just a sign of, like in this case, this is just the architecture, the tissue architecture in the small intestine. As you can see, you actually have multiple layers of muscle. So the muscularis, if you can see it, you actually have an inner circular layer with a longitudinal layer. So this means it goes around, and this means it goes straight up and down. Okay, longitudinal. And the reason why that is because you need peristalsis for food to actually move one way. And obviously you have epithelium, and again, the purpose of the epithelial layer in this case, especially this thing called, in this case, microvillus, is to absorb, in this case, the nutrients, especially in the small intestine. All right. Very, very important slide. This is actually telling you about all the enzymes. All of these are enzymes, and these are all regions, okay, or I'm sorry, macromolecules in this case. All right. So if you look at it, all right, so if you think about it, so starch and disaccharides are all digested by salivary amylase and pancreatic amylase, so from the saliva and from the pancreas. And the purpose of this is to, in this case, is to digest all the starch and glycogen into disaccharides in this case, right? Then what happens is that these disaccharides are further digested by small enzymes in the villus of the small intestine. And what happens then is, as you can see, these are all monosaccharides. These monosaccharides then can actually enter then into, through the small intestine, into the capillaries, into the small intestine, and then those nutrients then go back to your, guess where it goes? These are all capillaries, right? It goes into your right atrium to be distributed throughout the body. Okay. For proteins, on the other hand, as you can see, no digestion in the mouth occurs, but some occur in the stomach, again through pepsin, and you need hydrochloric acid for that. By the pancreatic enzymes, trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase. Again, a lot of them are pancreatic enzymes. And then once you become a small peptide, guess what? The small enzymes on the microvillus and the actual brush border, this is actually the brush border, ladies and gentlemen. What happens is then those small peptides then gets further digested into individual amino acids. In this case, we're talking about the 20 amino acids. And again, they are absorbed into the capillaries of the small intestine. We're not going to talk about this because this rarely happens, okay? But we do absorb nucleic acids. But fats, they actually undertake two different ways. Again, same thing. So in this case, the liver helps. So the liver, the only thing from the liver that actually helps with fat digestion is bile. And bile is a detergent. And so what happens is, if you treat a fat droplet with detergent, what happens with the fat droplet is it divides into smaller droplets. And the reason why you need small droplets is big droplets, enzymes cannot act on big hydrophobic droplets or nonpolar droplets. They can only act on small droplets, okay? And again, there's an enzyme from the pancreas called the pancreatic lipase. And again, you have monoglycerols and fatty acids and glycerol and fatty acid. Here's the big difference. Some of this actually get, all right, absorbed through the small intestine, and they actually enter the capillaries, the blood capillaries. But some of them, okay, in this case, the big ones, this one here, okay, so are actually absorbed through the lymphatic system. And that's actually how they go through the cisterna chyli, and they actually then enter, guess where it goes? The thoracic duct, where it actually then empties into the subclavian veins and eventually enters the, again, as usual, the right atrium. So the complication is only for fats, and that's because some of them are absorbed through the capillaries of the small intestine, but some of them are absorbed through the lymphatic system. Okay?